Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Are you worried about your ex racking up or spending all the money before settlement? We have had many emails sent in about people worried about a thing called wastage, where people are spending and using the assets before financial settlement. So today we're going to be covering what it is that you can do about it, what it is, and how you can protect yourself if it hasn't happened to you yet. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, this is a bit of a doom preppers episode.
It is.
Because it might not happen to you, but it seems to happen to a lot of people. And Mum, like you said, it seems to be a bit out of the narcissist playbook.
I think it is. There's someone walking around or writing, telling them what to do and what they can get away with. So forewarned is forearmed, guys.
Right. So let's put it in this context. I'm going to do a general storyline because we've had so many different stories come in. So the ex is they've split up and they're having a midlife crisis now. They want to impress their new lady friends. They want to spend money on expensive clothes. They want to go and take their new dates on expensive holidays. They buy a ridiculously expensive car.
Or motorbike.
They just go over the top and they're just hemorrhaging cash, but it's joint cash.
Yes.
It's your cash and their cash. And so it's like this storyline that we just keep hearing. And I guess there's a lot of people that don't know what the rules are around it when it comes to family court. And if you do know the rules, maybe you'll feel a little bit better off.
Maybe. I mean, a lot of our listeners, when they write in, they've been fiscally responsible. They're being very financially responsible. Sometimes they've got the kids. Sometimes they're making extra contributions to their super and just keeping it all together, probably like they did throughout the relationship.
And doing what we say and setting yourself up a budget and making sure that you're living within your means while you're going through this tricky time.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, their ex is wearing Armani suits and playing golf on the top of some building in Dubai.
And I'm among friends here but I have to say that men of a certain age seem to either remove body hair like a moustache or a beard, or they grow one.
Or they add hair.
Oh, they add hair, yeah. Sideburns. I had one fellow who suddenly developed huge sideburns, or gold chains, all that sort of stuff. So a Rolex watch, brand new cars, it's really galling. And so what you worry about is, first of all, I think, if you're not in court, how do you stop them? They've got access to this money. And is this going to be counted when you get into court? Does it matter?
And I guess that's something as well. Some people have written in and said they've been withdrawing super, like during that COVID time.
Oh,
you
my
could withdraw
goodness.
super.
Yes.
And another person said that their ex is running up a tax debt through the business.
Yes, just not paying tax for years. And when I look at them, it's generally from the date of separation. They haven't paid any tax, haven't paid the rates and anything like that, letting the house get run down, so all of those little tactics. Probably if they aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart, out of their own ideas, if whoever's advising them really probably doesn't understand the way that the court deals with it.
Look, and let's be fair, some of them might be going through an emotional drama and look, I like to go shopping when I'm depressed. When I'm upset.
We only go to op shops.
Yes, we only op shop. But if you I guess there is a psychological side to it where they might just be doing it because they're trying to fill a hole. But there are some people that are doing it strategically. So what we're going to talk about today, Mum, is what is wastage?
Yep.
How you prove it.
Yep.
What you can do about it. When do you ask about it? And how do you protect yourself?
And I think we should say also there, what does the court say? Because this is one of those classic situations where chickens come home to roost at the end of the day. The main thing to remember, I think we've listed pretty well all the wastage we can think of. There's also gambling, just not paying their bills.
Credit card debt.
Running up all the debts. A classic is withdrawing savings and blowing them, or not paying the mortgage and letting your offset account be the source of the mortgage. So all of those things. So I think everyone's got an idea of what wastage, or it might be selling something for less than it was worth.
So think
usually
about,
to a friend.
Think about your ex. We don't want to be doom people, but if you are in a situation where you think your ex might do this on purpose or by accident, or because maybe, you know, you've always been the one that's guided the spending and saying, well, maybe we shouldn't buy that VR headset because it's not really an investment. So think about what is it that potentially your ex might go and blow some money on or might stop doing or debt that you would rack up. And then so, Mum, can you explain to us, in the terms of the law, what is the term wastage? And I love that that's a term in law, because why don't they have a fancy Latin name for that? They have fancy Latin names for everything else. But what does wastage mean?
Wastage means anything that reduces the pool of property to be divided. So remembering, anyone who's listened to the property processes, they know that the first step is to value the property pool. And that means everything you've got, the cars, the house, the super, even the furniture gets a rough idea of a value, any interest in a business, and cash at bank and so forth. So if they are spending, the old saying used to be like a drunken sailor, or I like to think of a 9-year-old at a servo when you're on a road trip with unlimited funds, and they start spending it, the amount of money that remains to be divided, property, is being reduced. So you're wasting assets, and ultimately if you were going to go 50-50, it's 50-50 of what? They've blown all that money, so you get less money, or even if it was 80%, you still get less money. So that's what wastage is. It's anything over and above their normal living expenses. I was
just about to ask.
Yes.
So that people don't go, oh, am I wasting? No. But it's normal living expenses.
It's over and above. So that person, I think we heard someone spent $250,000 and a stack of their super. That's ludicrous. Obviously, if they're working, they don't need that sort of money just for day-to-day living.
Yeah.
And so there's good news is that the court will probably add it back in at the end.
Right. So is there any legislation, or is it in the Family Law Act, or is it just assumed?
That's a good question. It is kind of in the Family Law Act, so it's kind of under contributions. So for married people, that's Section 79(4), and there was this concept of a negative contribution to the asset pool. But the court's moved away from that now, and now they just straight out call it wastage, and there is case law about wastage. And my favourite cases are the ones Weir's case and Townsend's case, and one was where the fellow sold a taxi licence when it was worth a lot of money to a mate for really hardly any money. And there's another where a fellow, Weir, had a gravel pit, and when the valuers went out to value, I don't know how you value a hole.
A gravel?
The hole was bigger, the hole was bigger than it should have been, and there was no money coming in to prove it. So they could add that back. They said to the court, we reckon there's $100,000 worth of stuff missing. And the court goes, oh, well, we'll just add that in as a kind of notional asset. In other words, they normally will get away with it until the end when it all comes home to bite them. It just gets taken off their share.
Right.
Where it's a real worry, Laura, is where that's all you've got. And there isn't enough other property to compensate you for what they've spent. And then you might have to take some steps.
Right. So I guess we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But I guess the first thing we need to know is, because no one's just going to believe you and say, oh, we used to have this much, or we used to have this and now he's done, or she's spent this. So how do you prove?
Okay.
How do you prove wastage?
Okay. Well, the easiest way, I guess, is with disclosure from them about their bank statements and stuff. If he's hiding it, you might need to go to court and issue subpoenas. That generally shows a few trips to somewhere and generally shows. So you don't have to show where it went, though.
Okay.
You only have to show where it came from.
Right. So can I ask a question then? So one of our members in the Q&A sessions that we do for the DIY Divorce Blueprint, she was talking about how they haven't even properly separated yet, but her basically ex, like they've decided to split, they haven't done the financial stuff, they're still living in the house, has gone on a trip to Bali.
Yes.
Like, is that wastage?
It can be.
Yes.
It can be. So, it depends what your assets are, and that's really not ordinary living expenses.
Yes.
So that should be added back.
So she could prove that by
showing where the money came from. That's all you have to do. You don't show what they spent it on. You've got to show where it came from.
Well, how does what do you mean came from? So it came from this bank account?
You might show that when you separate, this bank account had this much money in it and now it hasn't, or his bank account had that, or the super was this and now it's less.
Okay.
Or we had a clean tax bill, slate tax-wise, and now it's that. So you can show all of that. And then it's up to them to prove that it was normal living expenses. Otherwise just say that it should all be added back in. And then that's when people they need to start producing like a schedule and showing their budget. And all right.
So let's boil this down to really basic so everybody understands, so that I understand. So you say you had $100,000 in a savings account or something, and you split, and then all of a sudden you look at your bank account, and instead of $100,000 in there, there's $10,000.
Yes.
So $90,000 has gone missing.
Yes.
You know that your ex has just gone on some whirlwind holiday around the world to see famous rock stars, whatever it is.
Even that.
And then you go, oh, okay, I've got $10,000 left. So your proof is there used to be 100, now there's 10. You don't even have to say he went on some fancy holiday.
Absolutely.
And then I suggest $90,000 missing.
And then I suggest you move that 10 into your name.
Mum is not giving advice. This is legal community
advice. If someone came to me with that, I'd say you better put that 10 somewhere safe. That's what I would normally say, so that at least if the washing machine breaks down, you're not in a fit,
totally.
Because that's fiscally irresponsible.
All right, so that's what wastage is. And so basically you prove wastage by just saying, look, this was what it was.
This is what we had.
And this is it. So if they're running down a business, you could say this is how much the business was worth before. This is how much it's worth now?
Yeah, that's tricky
That's a different kind of thing.
Yeah, I've yet to see a business that suddenly flourished after separation.
Yes.
And with COVID and some of the issues we're having in Australia at the moment, there might be a genuine issue with the business, and that's somewhat harder to prove.
Yeah.
But it is provable.
But so if with bank accounts, super.
Selling houses. Sometimes people sell houses.
Yeah.
So the key with all of those is you might want to try and stop some of it if it's going to mean that there's not enough other assets to compensate you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then I guess that's a really important thing then to make sure you know what your property pool is, really, right from the get-go.
Step one in the course.
Yeah. Yep. Well, in the property module, step one, sit down and figure out what your property asset pool is, because then you can, if they start doing silly stuff like that, you can go, oh, that's all right, we've got enough money to add it back. But then what do you do about it? Like I know you've just said, okay, we'll take that 10 grand out. And again, this is just an education podcast. It's not advice.
It's just practical.
And always get your own independent legal advice, because every situation is different. But Mum, what can people do to stop it? Or can they stop it? Or is it really you just have to?
Sometimes they can take practical steps, like freeze some accounts so that needs 2 signatures. Be careful with that, because you won't be able to get money out either if you need it for the kids or yourself. If it looks like it's going to be a really make it impossible or really hard for you to get your fair share of what the property pool was, then you might need to take steps, go and see a lawyer. You might need to bring an application to the court to get an injunction to stop them selling a house or whatever. But sometimes when they're doing stuff like this, it doesn't affect there's still enough other assets to give you half of or whatever percentage it was of what was. So, that's the key. The court won't really intervene unless, if you bring an application, unless what they're doing reduces the asset pool so much that you're not going to get your fair share of what was.
Okay, so let's do this as an example.
Yep.
All you have in the asset pool is just $100,000 and your ex takes out $90,000 and blows it all on hats. And all you've got left in the asset pool then is 10 grand. So there's no way that can be added back. But if you had $200,000 and your ex took out $50,000 and you were going to split the money in the beginning 50-50, all that means is you would get generally
the court can add it back.
Yeah,
so
because there's enough money to add it back.
That's right. There's enough to put a notional add back. But then, of course, your ex might say, oh, but 20 of that was on groceries and I needed my teeth veneered and I needed this and I needed that. So it might not be the whole amount.
Yes.
You know, because the court, what the cases say is nobody goes into suspended animation after separation.
Yeah.
And sometimes people take a long time after separation before they go to court. So if that's you and it's happening to you, just be aware of the difference between what is normal spending on day-to-day living expenses and this wastage thing, and keep an eye and run to a lawyer and get to court if you have to, if it's going to be that you're not going to get your fair share.
So if that basically is how you protect yourself, isn't
Yes.
it? If you're looking and you know what your full property asset pool is and you can see it's dwindling to a point where they can't pay you back, then you should be not delaying.
No, don't delay.
And that's part of the delay tactics episode that we've done.
Yes.
It's one of the strategies that people do is delay it so they can spend all the money.
Yes. And you don't know where they've got it. It could be in a shoebox under the bed.
So the court can't say, well, there's nothing left in the asset pool, so you owe a $100,000 debt. They don't do that?
It's so rare.
Okay.
It's so rare because the job of the court is to divide the property pool, and the first step is to find out what assets and to get to make a finding that someone's got to pay you and go into debt to pay you is just, I can't even think of an example where that would have happened.
What about debts? So what if your ex is racking up this ridiculous debt?
Yes.
Does that get split in the property, or does he
unless
take
he can show,
take the debt?
Yeah, unless they can show, normally in court cases, unless they can show that that debt was for normal living expenses, then it's post-separation debt either gets ignored, and just that's their problem.
Even if it's in joint names?
If you can show they're the ones that have been irresponsible with it, or to the extent that you can prove they've been irresponsible.
But definitely get legal advice.
Oh gosh, yes.
Go and get legal advice if you think that's happening to you.
Yeah.
So
because
it's more about moving quickly.
If that's happening, if you've got someone diminishing the asset pool, like shrinking the pool on purpose, get some legal advice. Find out if your case is one that needs you to go to court, or if your case is one where you can be complacent because there's plenty of other assets to be used.
Right.
But yeah, it's an interesting issue.
So when do you ask? So say you're in a your ex is depleting the asset pool, but there is plenty more left. When do you point it out to the other side or the lawyers on the other side? When do you say, hey, by the way, this guy's or this chick's been spending all the money and depleting the asset pool. I want some of it back. Yeah. When do you point that out?
Well, in negotiations usually, in the first letter.
So in letters.
Maybe we normally would put it in a letter. Yes, and perhaps just put them on notice that it's not going to work.
Oh, okay. So if you let them know that you're onto them and that you're going to be asking for it back, then it might stop them?
Yep, sometimes. So I often put a court put one of the cases in that show how it works.
Well, we'll put them in the show notes.
Yep, okay.
So other people can look at it and feel a little bit better about themselves.
Yes.
But Mum, you said to me before we were recording this, because we did go through some of the emails that we get, and there was some really sad stories when it comes to wastage. One poor lady had cancer, and, there's all these kind of things that are going on, and it's just horrible. But you were saying, and then we've got some members who you do your phone calls with, and you're like, you've realised even though that system is there and the court supports that in a way, you got to have a lawyer that's got the guts.
Yep, the guts and the knowledge.
So what do you want to say to everybody listening?
I think if it doesn't feel right to you, get them to explain why it's okay, and if necessary, get them to give you a letter of advice. That will make them think about it. But if you've got a lawyer, like every case is different, so we're just educating you.
Yeah.
So just raise it and make sure your lawyer has considered it or is across it, and let them explain to you whether it applies to you or doesn't apply to you. Okay, so sometimes just normal living expenses, and look at it this way, they might move out and pay 6 months rent on a unit or a house. That's normal, really, living expenses, and that could be a big chunk of money. So don't go galloping down looking at every dollar because parties live normally.
You've got to live
after.
reasonable expenses.
That's right.
But I think what you're saying is important, and I'm not ragging on legal aid. I'm not ragging on the community people.
No.
I think all the extra legal support people can get is fantastic, and this is a community education, so we can't legally support you. Mum can't legally support you. But sometimes you're saying, Mum, and this is going to upset some people, but sometimes the lawyers, they're not very experienced.
Well, I think sometimes those lawyers, they're they're funded to do your basic property settlement.
Yeah.
Here's the property pool. Here's the contributions. These are the future needs. And is this just and equitable? When you start getting into wastage, that's quite complex area. As you can tell, we're talking about it for so far 21 minutes and we haven't even really got to the end of it. So, and that's an area that probably needs someone who's got more expertise or the funding to explore those issues. It may not be an expertise issue. It may be the funding.
Yeah, and I guess that's
into that. And that can make a trial.
Because it's so hard to get legal aid and any other kind of support.
And we're grateful
legal
to
service.
them.
It's fantastic. So I guess they've got to kind of just do the basics, get you sorted, get you done. So if you are, thinking, not with the legal aid, but with a lawyer. Sometimes you were also saying some lawyers just do everything. They do conveyancing, they do law, they do family, they do criminal.
And so
they don't fully know the nuances and the cases.
Yep. It'd be like me trying to do criminal law. I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just make sure that your lawyer has considered it and is across it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
if
right.
that's an issue for you.
I think that's important because I do think, and I learned this through my medical things, because I've got endometriosis. I'm one of their champions. I'm always trying to get out there and get that information out because you can go to a doctor and one doctor will say, endometriosis, the cure is this, and another doctor will say, well, endometriosis, you have to do this, and that. When you actually educate yourself and learn about it, you're like, well, wait a minute, that's not
It's like migraines. You've got to get to a doctor who understands. Otherwise they go, are you drinking enough water?
Yeah. So I guess it's the same thing, doctors. And you just because you go to one lawyer, if you feel like it's not okay, you can always ask for a second opinion.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And people and if you tell your second lawyer that it is a second opinion and you don't want them to talk to your initial lawyer, then it's fine.
Okay. All right. But we are appreciative of all the people that do all the help because we know there's so many people out there. They're amazing. Okay, so you try and ask, is mediation a good time to be asking? You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum and family law accredited specialist, to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. Register now for our free webinar to help you make the best decision for your future. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today.
No, that's a bit too late.
Right. Okay, so you've got to ask that before mediation.
You really do, because you need to, on the day you walk into mediation, you need to know exactly what's what. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Right.
Because you need to prepare for mediation a little bit like you would for a trial.
Yes.
So you know exactly what your property pool is, what your arguments are, what they can prove, what they can't prove, so, no, it's a bit early. A bit late, sorry. I think what I'd be doing is as soon as you notice the behaviour, I think you write a letter, do your sums, talk to your lawyer about it, and then see if you can write them a letter and say, hey, stop this, or maybe even, like I said, freeze the account or do something.
Yeah.
Or agree on an amount and freeze the rest, whatever.
And again, we're not trying to doom make people think, oh no, this is really bad. But if you're aware that this is something that can happen, and there's actually, if they do something like that and there isn't enough property in the pool, then there's not much that's going to be helping you. So you should be aware, have your finger on the pulse. And like we always say when it comes to finances, Mum, know where the money's going, where it's coming in, be aware of the money flow in the system that you have together as a couple, so that after separation, before you've settled it all, you still can see where it's going and what's happening to it.
That's what Pedro says. Pedro Marin says, look at your processes, your financial processes. So it might be...
I'll put that episode in as well.
It might sound a bit doom and gloom, Laura, but there are a lot of people who might feel comforted knowing that, look, if he sells that car, we've still got enough property to satisfy my claim. And I have to say, it's always easier to stop the waste, like it's better if you can stop it than trying to get it added back. Because like I said, that can turn a day-long trial into a 2-day trial, or a 2-day trial into a 4-day trial. And
the cost of that would probably be more than the add back.
Well, if it is, then you may have to let it go. So those are things to consider.
And I think that's a really dirty tactic. I do genuinely believe there must be there's a TikTok account called Child Support School, and I don't want to educate people on this, but there's a guy who literally does TikToks on how to avoid paying child support.
Is he Australian?
I don't know. But they're really horrible things. And so I know there are people out there that are saying, run the money down, do this,
go
do
50-50 for the kids.
Yeah, well, that's what he said. And I was like,
he said that was the number one way to avoid child support.
So there are people out there that are giving this information to people. So be aware that if your ex seems like the kind of person that goes, this is my money and I don't want her to have it, which in that post-separation abuse, domestic violence world does happen a lot, you need to be proactive and keep your eye on the ball. And I do know a lot of people who say, look, I don't know where our bank accounts are. I don't know, we've got trusts and we've got companies and I don't understand the system. It's your job to go find out.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people that write in and say, my ex isn't doing disclosure. He's just not doing it. So go and find out yourself.
You know what I say? Yeah. Disclosure is what they call it in the new legislation. But we used to call it discovery, which is much more proactive work.
Yes.
And there's a lot you can discover. You're doing searches on companies and so forth yourself.
And we talk you through that in the DIY disclosure episode.
Do your own disclosure.
Which is one of our most popular podcasts episodes.
Yes.
Because you can go and do some of that work yourself.
Yeah.
And then even if you can't get all the information, you can say, hey, I found this information. Can you please give me some more information? So at least you've got the proof that it exists.
That's right. And then you can ask them to give you the rest of the information. And the ultimate thing when you have someone who will not disclose is that you should perhaps, this is what I do anyway, education for people, is you can say, all right, well, last time I saw it, it was this. I believe it's grown in value to this. So if you don't give me any evidence to the contrary, I'm going with this being worth $500,000. And you have to, because you've got the only evidence.
A lady wrote in the other day, one of our members, and she said that the judge said to her ex, if you don't give disclosure by the next time we come, I'm going to let her choose a number.
Yes.
So I guess, again, it is hard for people who are at the beginning or in the middle because you're just stressed out and confused and worried. But when it does come down to the crunch of mediation or at trial, that they do get a comeuppance.
They do. Their uppance comes.
Yes. But if they've spent more of the property pool than there is to share, that's why you have to keep your finger on the pulse.
So I can tell you about the quarry case, the gravel pit case. The judge said, right, so there's 100,000 missing, is there? And he said, all right, then I'm going to add that in as a notional asset, imaginary asset, and I'm going to give the wife $50,000 of that. And so he gave her an additional $50,000. He appealed, the father, the husband, because there's no evidence. She appealed, cross-appealed, and I don't know why, but the full court said that this is like 3 judges, so the appeal court said, well, we're not going to interfere with the judge's decision because they have discretion. But if it was in front of us, they gave an indication that they would have given her the whole 100,000.
Oh, wow.
And their words were something like that we would not criticise a judge who deals robustly, which is strong words from an appeal court. Robustly.
Scary.
With a person who does not make disclosure. So, that was a clear warning shot to anyone who's going to try and do any shenanigans. But the hard part is you're struggling with money and everything, and they've got everything, and it's not until you get to court that it can be resolved. Yeah. Thankfully, thanks to these new reforms, the trials aren't as long away, and so there's less time for shenanigans with the money.
I guess so, and I guess that they have sped it up, Mum. You say they've sped it up.
They have. Honestly, they have.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's like when a dog runs really fast, sometimes their bottom almost overtakes their head. The court's got available dates and the lawyers are struggling to get the cases ready for it.
Wow, because
It's
in
really
the old
good.
day, a year or two ago, it was like, we don't have a court case available trial date until
the year after next.
2025.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They were like, not until the end of next year or not until the year after next.
So I guess in a way that's good.
It's great.
That if you are here right now listening and you are sweating chips because your ex is just diminishing the assets or wastage, don't worry. I guess. Definitely go
education,
and see a lawyer.
Yep.
This is education, legal education. It's not advice. Go and get independent legal advice. But please keep your finger on the pulse. And I think it's probably important to say, I do know a lot of people, Mum, and I think this goes back to maybe people's childhoods, but when some kid does something mean, the other kid goes, well, right, I'm going to do it too.
Yes.
So is it a bad idea to start wasting things
Oh, my God.
on your side? So if they're wasting money, you go, well, I'm going to go waste money. Is that a great idea or?
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that.
No, but I think it's a psychological thing to be aware
That's
of.
right. But whose money is it? What's your future going to be like if you are both irresponsible? What about the kids if you're both irresponsible?
Yeah.
You know, and when you go to court and try and make these allegations and you don't have clean hands, you've been doing it as well. You know, you might not be believed as much. I mean, I think I don't think our listeners would do that.
No, but I think it's important to point out that with disclosure as well. Like we did have a question in the Q&A and it was, you know, she accidentally not disclosed something and she immediately fixed it up. He's deliberately not disclosing anything, but you know, they're both going to be seen. They're both going to be seen as making them
dodgy.
As dodgy. So I think it's important for you, as you always say, Mum, clean shoes, clean nose, brushed hair, teacher's pet behaviour. Just be good, do everything right.
Be the good person.
And stick to the right side of the law. Don't try and trick and do dodgy stuff because it will come home to roost.
Yeah, there is absolutely nothing, I believe, that anyone could do in these processes that hasn't been tried before.
Yeah.
And the courts are well aware of it. I mean, the court system, Family Law Act's been running since 1976. So, you know, there's 50 years nearly of experience and thousands and thousands and thousands of couples and all of the cases that come up, the appeal cases are usually as a result of someone trying something or can be as well. So, but the court's been plugging gaps with case law. The legislation's been gap plugging. So it's pretty clear now. There's not many new surprises.
Yeah.
And so be sure it will find you out. You will be discovered. And the lovely thing of the internet, I love it. Instead of having to go into town and go into a building and do a search of the company things, it's a couple of keystrokes on the computer.
Yeah.
Red book values.
Yeah. So definitely check out the DIY disclosure episode.
Yep.
Again, this is all just education. Yep. This isn't advice. Please go and get independent legal advice.
It's a particularly tricky area.
Let's talk about, before we finish off, Mum, amicable. If you're in an amicable relationship right now with your ex, this doesn't mean you sit down and do nothing about this, do you?
Well, no. And amicable, when I think of amicable in these circumstances, it's like amicable with a business partner, and that you still have to have eyes on what's happening and just, you know, watch their patterns.
So if you've got an ex that says, don't worry, I'll take care of all of this, I'll send you some paperwork and you can sign it and then we'll walk away. Do not take your finger off the pulse.
That's right.
You need to stay focused as well because even though it may seem amicable, there are so many people that write in that go, I thought it was amicable and now I've realised what he's done and what she's done.
The only little bit of protection you've got with where something is wrong in a consent order, for instance, is that the court may not make the order if it doesn't look fair, but they don't know all the facts either.
Yes, true.
They ask a little question in that application about have you disposed of anything in 12 months. I think they put that in your financial statements as well.
Right.
But it doesn't always show up. And also if they rush to give you a binding, well, they used to be called binding financial agreement, which doesn't have any court scrutiny, be very thoughtful and ask for your disclosure.
Okay, so that's amicable. What about avoidant? Does wastage it's issues of
It
wastage
can
happen with
do, like
avoidant?
because I think sometimes really avoidant behaviour is also a mental health issue, and it can be like gambling, or the big one is letting the house run down. So if you've got a really avoidant partner, you may have to move. Even if you've got kids, you may have to move. They stay in the house, they stop mowing the lawn, the house starts to fail, and when it comes to valuing the property, it's worth less than it was.
Is that wastage?
That can be wastage, yeah.
Okay, so
and
keep your eye on that.
Yeah, and a famous case of Kowali, Kowali, I think.
Send it to me, I'll put it in the notes.
Okay. In that case, the husband in that case, had a house. He let some people in to rent it really cheap, and they didn't pay the mortgage, and they didn't pay their rent, and I don't know if they even trashed the house a little bit, but the place was worth a lot less than it should have been, and that was his sort of avoidant behaviour. I don't think it was malicious, but his actions by not being proactive in getting them out caused the parties to lose some money.
So that got added back?
Yeah,
Oh,
it did.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what about high conflict? So pain in the butts, constantly fighting about everything person. Does wastage come into that?
Oh, yeah, everyone does. Every case personality type could have it.
So get a lot of proof.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're the ones, the high conflict ones are often the new car, new motorbike, disputing your contribution. This is all mine. You had nothing. You just stayed home with the kids, so I can spend it. It's mine.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to education with a lot of people. They don't know the family court rules. They don't know the legislation. So after a split up, they just assume it is theirs.
Well, they may have always assumed. I can. It's getting less now, but I remember over the years, the number of, and sorry, it's mostly the men who had the super in those days, and they go, my super is part of the property, my super.
Well, people still are shocked by that. So, okay, so just be aware, get your evidence and educate. Sometimes all you need to do is educate the other side and say, hey, look, this is the property pool. If you're spending it,
it's going to get added back in. I'm going to ask for it to be added back in.
So make sure you're spending it on something you actually like. Because I do feel like maybe in other countries, maybe in America, that is a thing that people can get away with. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
We don't know American law.
Well, because there's 52 states and they're all different, I think.
know. What a nightmare. So definitely
just tell them.
Check and educate. Like
just write them a letter and say, for your information, here's these 3 cases.
Yeah.
You won't probably get away with that. Yeah. So, make sure you're enjoying it.
On something you like.
Because they think they're spending half of your money, but actually they may be spending all of their share.
Yeah, that's not great, is it? Okay, and then lastly, the manipulative and controlling narcissistic type.
Well, they're the ones, I'm afraid, who've often got a structure that you don't know what they're doing, what the hell they're doing, and you're going to have to be a bit of a sleuth, particularly if they've said, don't worry about it, darling, I'm looking after all the finances, and there are women who run the finances as well, and there are men who don't know what's going on. Oh, I just went out to work. She's the one who managed the money. Yeah. So a little bit of education first, sleuthing, and it might break a habit of 20 years or 10 years to say, actually, I want to know about this.
Yes. Yeah.
But do that first, and then you can see if they're taking advantage of it.
Yeah. So maybe go listen to the episode that Pedro talks about figuring out where the money flow is, how it's working. If you don't understand it, go talk to a financial advisor, go talk to an accountant, go talk to your bank. Just
watch
ask
YouTube.
them,
just find everything.
How does this work? Why is this money going here and then going there? Because you need to know, like I kind of think of it like an ocean that flows in through a river, into a stream, into a lake, you know. As long as you know where the money is flowing, like the water, you'll be able to follow it and trace it and make sure
it back.
What's happening and what's happening and where it's going. Because your property pool is that lake, So if it's going out into the tide, into the ocean that you can't get it back, that's going to be a problem.
Or into someone else's little
somebody
pond.
Else's
Someone's
lake.
siphoned it off.
Someone's coming with a little suction water tank and taking all the...
Can I just say one thing I want to say to people is that the number of times I've had in a manipulative and controlling situation where either just prior to separation or just after, they are pressured to signing a loan document usually for a car or something for the business. But I've had a couple of people now, and one many years ago. She was just released from hospital and he drove her straight to the car yard to sign to get a new car because he couldn't get the loan. His credit rating was bad. And she signed it under pressure. Well, he left the next day, took the four-wheel drive and disappeared in Northern Territory with her being stuck with the debt.
Right.
So
don't sign things.
Yeah, and that's
Unless
an
you see a
example
lawyer.
from so far away that I know no one can identify the person, but it happens all the time.
Right.
And if you're used to just signing where you're told, you need to have a look at that. And if you're listening to us, you probably are at least considering separating. So now's the time to stop, because if sometimes the other person knows the separation's coming along before you do and they're busy arranging stuff, the manipulative and controlling
Yeah,
types.
it does seem to be like that happens to a lot of people that write in. It's you know that the breakup's coming and you're focused on the relationship. A lot of these people
Trying to
focus on
save it,
trying to, or trying to go like, should we stay together? Should we not stay? Why, mind you, if they're with a manipulative, controlling person, they've stopped thinking about that, and they're just going, how can I arrange this so I can make sure I've got the most money, or I can feather my nest, or I can move on to the next branch. So
a number of people who think they're in couples counselling to reunite, and then they look back and the whole time there's been person taking steps to get out.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That's a bit
little bit
sad.
depressing. Little bit depressing, but I think so many people write in about wastage. So I think it's great that we've covered this topic as a community education. Well, you don't like the word community, but legal education.
Yep.
So and really our aim in these podcasts is to just alleviate that stress and fear.
Educate,
empower and equip.
That's
Because
it.
by knowing what potentially the law can do for you means you
And
can feel
can't
a
do.
bit more empowered, and it equips you now, hopefully if you're listening, to look out for those signs and to be proactive about it. Go and see a lawyer, get it stopped, or make some moves so that it doesn't happen too much.
Or be calm, be able to relax, knowing, okay, it's okay if that happens because there's a paper trail and there's plenty of other stuff available for me, because some people stress about it.
But definitely go and see a lawyer.
Yep, definitely go and see a lawyer.
Don't take mum's word for it that you can relax, because
No, but it does worry people.
Yeah, of course.
And so I guess the real bottom line is, Laura, that there are processes that the court's seen this before. Sometimes you can manage to sort it out. Sometimes it's too late. And as long as you're aware, you can, go and get some advice on that point.
Yeah. Oh, we wish you all the best.
We do.
And hopefully, keep writing in, keep giving us podcast ideas, because we're happy to continue to educate, empower and equip. Hey, Mum.
That's right, Triple E's. And we've done 100 and gosh, how many podcasts.
Yes,
so,
I know, but only 100 are allowed to be up. So we're going to have a back catalogue for our members that they can access whenever they want.
So it may be if they email in and...
Yeah. Well, if you can't find an episode, you can always email in and I can send you the direct link. But
yes, because those early ones were the very early.
They were very good too.
Separation.
So we might have to redo them.
They were terrible technically. We rented a cottage.
Yeah.
Remember in the bush?
Yeah, it
and a
was
bird
terrible.
flew into the window in the
know.
middle of the first
And we left it in there because I didn't know
we
how to
didn't think
edit.
anyone was listening. and you didn't know how to edit?
No, I didn't know how to edit. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Mum, for coming along.
That's
and
all
good
right,
luck,
Laura.
everybody. Hopefully no one's getting any wastage today, but take care of yourselves and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.